Hello. Okay, so we're going to be reading Julius Caesar, Act 1, Scene 2, and I'm going to break it up into two different video segments just so I can hopefully upload them correctly into Google Classroom. Also, this is a little bit of a big scene, so we need to kind of talk it out a little bit. So I'll be doing that, and I'll let you know kind of how that break is, what questions go with what in the break, okay? Okay, so you want to go ahead and turn in your book to page 825. And we're going to go ahead and start reading scene 2. In this scene, we have Caesar and his wife, Calpurnia. Antony is there. Now, Antony is Mark Antony, he's a very big Caesar supporter. He loves Caesar, really deeply respects him, okay? He's about to run in a race, which I mean, that's, I guess, the thing you do sometimes whenever you're a Roman citizen. I don't know. And so he's about to run in this nice little race, and there are other people that are kind of they're going to be watching the race. And there's some other stuff that's going to happen, so I'm going to pause it occasionally and kind of talk it out, okay? So we're on page 825, Act 1, Scene 2.
Calpurnia.
Peace, how? Caesar speaks.
Calpurnia.
Here, my lord.
Stand you directly in Antonius' way when he doth run his course. Antonius.
Caesar, my lord.
Forget not in your speed, Antonius, to touch Calpurnia. For our elders say the barren touched in this holy chase shake off their sterile curse.
I shall remember. When Caesar says do this, it is performed.
Set on, and leave no ceremony out.
Okay, I want to explain this a little bit. So first of all, what we may not know is Calpurnia, Caesar's wife, she's barren. Now, people don't necessarily know, is it something that is going on in her body? She can't have children. Barren means she can't have children. Or is it something related to Caesar? Is he not able to produce children? Nobody knows. But back in kind of the ancient world, it was a big deal for you to be able to bear children. It shows like virility and strength and, you know, that type of thing, which is kind of a silly thing, but that's just the way they viewed things. So they have a superstition that whenever somebody's racing, that it's like good luck if they touch a person as they run by. So Caesar tells Antony as he's running in this race, like, hey, don't forget, I need you to reach out and touch Calpurnia as you run by, and, you know, maybe it will end the sterile curse. So they're superstitious. Now try to think for a second, what are some superstitions that we have? How many times have you heard somebody like say something and they're like, oh, knock on wood. You know, like they want to make sure like the thing they just said doesn't happen, so they're going to knock on wood. That's superstitious. Do you know people who won't walk under a ladder? Do you remember when you were a little kid and you were like, step on a crack and you break your mother's back? I've stepped on lots of cracks. My mom's back is fine. And my children say my back is fine. They step on cracks all the time. But you have like little weird, silly superstitions based on kind of age, where you are. It's more of like probably like a cultural superstition. So this just happens to be a Roman superstition at the time, knowing that barrenness, not being able to have a baby, is kind of a big deal, especially whenever you are a leader. Okay, so the race is starting, and now something really weird is going to happen.
Who calls?
Bid every noise be still, peace yet again.
Who is it in the press that calls on me? I hear a tongue shriller than all the music cry Caesar. Speak. Caesar is turned to hear.
Beware the Ides of March.
What man is that?
A soothsayer bids you beware the Ides of March.
Set him before me. Let me see his face.
Fellow, come from the throng. Look upon Caesar.
What sayest thou to me now? Speak once again.
Beware the Ides of March.
He is a dreamer. Let us leave him. Pass.
Okay, so we're pausing that. Okay, so there's a soothsayer. This would be like a, think of person who like, you know, maybe tells the future or prophetic type of entity. People think that this person, when they say things, it matters. So the soothsayer says, beware the Ides of March. Now, one thing we don't celebrate the Ides of months. That's kind of a weird thing. The Ides of a month is the 15th of a month, at least in months that have 30 days. It's the middle. So the 15th of March, the soothsayer is saying, beware the Ides of March. Now, if we remember from scene 1, it was talking about that scene 1 was during like the Feast of Lupercal. The Feast of Lupercal is a feast that at least starts on the 15th of February. So we're in front of the 15th of March. And the soothsayer is saying to Caesar, beware, something bad is going to happen on March 15th. And Caesar's like, what? That's weird. You know, bring him closer. And all he says is just beware, that day is going to really go badly for you. Caesar says he's a dreamer. Let us leave him. Pass. I mean, I don't know. Whenever something like that happens in a piece of literature, that is always significant. It is always important. People really need to pay attention. If you ever find yourself in a piece of literature and people are warning you about dates, please listen. Okay, let's continue. Before we continue, the next conversation is going to go on for a bit. It's kind of a long conversation between Cassius and Brutus. These are two politicians. Brutus is a very well-respected politician. He's a very noble human. He's somebody who cares deeply about Rome. Like, he loves Rome. He loves the people of Rome. He also admires Caesar. Cassius is a bit, he's also a politician. And man, think of your stereotypical politician and you have Cassius right on target, okay? He is a bit oily, greasy, slippery, however you want to put it. Like, he does not necessarily seem to have honorable intentions. Of course, all politicians are not like that. Please, of course. But Cassius seems like that perfect stereotype of that politician that's a little bit shady in some way. So this is the conversation we're going to hear between Cassius, who's a bit shady, and Brutus, who is this very noble person who cares deeply about Rome and the people of Rome. Okay.
Will you go see the order of the course?
Not I.
I pray you, do.
I am not gamesome. I do lack some part of that quick spirit that is in Antony. Let me not hinder, Cassius, your desires. I'll leave you.
Brutus, I do observe you now of late. I have not from your eyes that gentleness and show of love as I was wont to have. You bear too stubborn and too strange a hand over your friend that loves you.
Cassius, be not deceived. If I have veiled my look, I turn the trouble of my countenance merely upon myself. Vexed I am of late, with passions of some difference, conceptions only proper to myself, which give some soil, perhaps, to my behaviours. But let not therefore my good friends be grieved, among which number, Cassius, be you one. Nor construe any further my neglect than that poor Brutus, with himself at war, forgets the shows of love to other men.
Okay, so let's pause for a second. So Cassius is pointing out that Brutus has been acting a little bit weird lately. Brutus seems to be kind of mulling over things. He's thinking. He seems a little downcast in some way. Have you ever been friends with somebody and like they seem suddenly to just be more serious than normal? It's like they're going through something, and you can tell just by their demeanor, just by the way that they look, that something is up, and you want to know what's up. And sometimes they can share it, and sometimes they don't want to, right? Well, with Brutus, he says, poor Brutus is with himself at war. So I am at war with myself. Think of those times whenever you're at war with yourself. Maybe you're concerned about something. Maybe you have a decision to make. You're at war with yourself. That's where he's at. We have to wonder what he's at war with himself about. Probably we're going to get some clues in this conversation.
Then, Brutus, I have much mistook your passion, by means whereof this breast of mine hath buried thoughts of great value, worthy cogitations. Tell me, good Brutus, can you see your face?
No, Cassius. For the eye sees not itself but by reflection, by some other things.
'Tis just. And it is very much lamented, Brutus, that you have no such mirrors as will turn your hidden worthiness into your eye, that you might see your shadow. I have heard where many of the best respect in Rome, except immortal Caesar, speaking of Brutus and groaning underneath this age's yoke, have wished that noble Brutus had his eyes.
To what dangers would you lead me, Cassius? That you would have me seek into myself for that which is not in me?
Therefore, good Brutus, be prepared to hear. And since you know you cannot see yourself so well as by reflection, I, your glass, will modestly discover to yourself that of yourself which you yet know not of. And be not jealous on me, gentle Brutus, were I a common laughter, or did use to stale with ordinary oaths my love to every new protester. If you know that I do fawn on men and hug them hard, and after scandal them, or if you know that I profess myself in banqueting to all the rout, then hold me dangerous.
What means this shouting? I do fear the people choose Caesar for their king.
Aye. Do you fear it? Then must I think you would not have it so?
I would not, Cassius.
Okay, really quickly, got to pause for a second. So Cassius says, Brutus, can you see yourself? And Brutus is like, no, I don't have a mirror in front of me at all times. And Cassius says, let me be your mirror. Let me tell you how other people see you. That's super nifty. Like I said, Cassius is one I wouldn't trust farther than I can throw him. And so he's talking to Brutus about like, hey, you don't know how others perceive you. You don't know how great others think you are. When somebody starts like telling you how great you are and there's no real reason for it, don't you kind of start thinking, what do you want? What's going on? So that's definitely what's happening here. Then they hear a lot of shouts, trumpets, and Brutus is like, whoa, what does this mean? I do fear the people choose Caesar for their king. And Cassius says, do you fear it? Then must I think you would not have it so? Cassius just found out how Brutus feels politically. Have you ever asked somebody about like how they feel politically? Are you conservative? Are you liberal? Are you a Democrat? Are you a Republican? And people are like, oh, I don't tell, or whatever they say. But then they say something and you're like, aha, I've got it. I know. Well, that's what just happened there. So Brutus has admitted that he does not want Caesar to be made a king. That's significant because Brutus is a fan of Caesar. Brutus he likes Caesar. He's a friend to Caesar. So that's significant if he doesn't want Caesar to be king. Cassius didn't know where Brutus stood. Now he does.
Cassius, yet I love him well. But wherefore do you hold me here so long? What is it that you would impart to me? If it be aught toward the general good, set honor in one eye and death in the other, and I will look on both indifferently. For let the gods so speed me as I love the name of honor more than I fear death.
I know that virtue to be in you, Brutus, as well as I do know your outward favor. Well, honor is the subject of my story. I cannot tell what you and other men think of this life, but for my single self, I had as lief not be, as live to be in awe of such a thing as I myself. I was born free as Caesar, so were you. We both have fed as well, and we can both endure the winter's cold as well as he. For once, upon a raw and gusty day, the troubled Tiber chafing with her shores, Caesar said to me, Darest thou, Cassius, now leap in with me into this angry flood and swim to yonder point? Upon the word, accoutred as I was, I plunged in and bade him follow. So indeed he did. The torrent roared, and we did buffet it with lusty sinews, throwing it aside and stemming it with hearts of controversy. But ere we could arrive the point proposed, Caesar cried, Help me, Cassius, or I sink. I, as Aeneas, our great ancestor, did from the flames of Troy upon his shoulder the old Anchises bear, so from the waves of Tiber did I, the tired, Caesar. And this man is now become a god. And Cassius is a wretched creature, and must bend his body if Caesar carelessly but nod on him. He had a fever when he was in Spain, and when the fit was on him, I did mark how he did shake. 'Tis true, this god did shake. His coward lips did from their color fly, and that same eye, whose bend doth all the world, did lose his luster. I did hear him groan. Aye, and that tongue of his, that bade the Romans mark him and write his speeches in their books, alas, it cried, give me some drink, Titinius, as a sick girl. You gods, it doth amaze me a man of such a feeble temper should so get the start of the majestic world and bear the palm alone.
Okay, so let's pause for a second because Cassius just said a lot. So Brutus admitted, yeah, I love Caesar. Well, I don't want him to be a king, but I do love him. I care about him. But I love honor more than death, okay? Cassius tells this story about Caesar. He says, hey, we were born as free as Caesar. Caesar's no better than us, is what he's saying. And then he says, hey, this one time Caesar and I were swimming in a river. We start swimming across the Tiber River, and suddenly, this guy that, they're about to make king was like, Cassius, help me, save me. I can't go any farther. And so, yeah, I did. Whatever. I saved his life. It's cool. And now he's going to be made a god, and he's going to be made a king, and I'm just supposed to be regular old ordinary Joe over here. And I'm supposed to honor him. This guy is saved. That's weird. He talks about how, he was... he was as sick like a girl, he said. That makes me cranky because I don't think that girls are weak. But of course he does, his era and all. He says, how could we put a man that is this feeble into power? He's about to be literally the leader of the free world as we know it. And we're going to put him in power, and he's sickly, and he doesn't have a lot of strength. And that's the guy we're going to go with? That's crazy. Cassius. More
Another
trumpets.
general shout. I do believe that these applauses are for some new honors that are heaped on Caesar.
Why, man, he doth bestride the narrow world like a colossus. And we petty men walk under his huge legs and peep about to find ourselves dishonorable graves. Men at some time are masters of their fates. The fault, dear Brutus, is not in our stars, but in ourselves that we are underlings. Brutus and Caesar. What should be in that Caesar? Why should that name be sounded more than yours? Write them together. Yours is as fair a name. Sound them, it doth become the mouth as well. Weigh them, it is as heavy. Conjure with them. Brutus will start a spirit as soon as Caesar. Now, in the names of all the gods at once, upon what meat doth this our Caesar feed, that he is grown so great? Age, thou art shamed. Rome, thou hast lost the breed of noble bloods. When went there by an age since the great flood, but it was famed with more than with one man? When could they say till now that talked of Rome, that her wide walks encompassed but one man? Now, is it Rome indeed, and room enough when there is in it but one only man? Go. You and I have heard our fathers say, there was a Brutus once that would have brooked the eternal devil to keep his state in Rome as easily as a king.
Okay, we're going to pause there. A couple things I wanted to point out about what Cassius is saying here. He talks about how Caesar has set himself up like a colossus. If you know your ancient wonders of the world, excuse me, the Colossus was a huge statue of Apollo, and it was in the harbor of Rhodes. And actually, if you're in your book, on page 829. In the margin of your book, it tells you about the Colossus. But this Colossus like had 1 foot on one side of the harbor and 1 foot on the other side of the harbor. And it was this massive statue of Apollo, the god Apollo. And so Cassius is saying Caesar set himself up like a god. It's arguable. He's got a point. Then he says, men at some time are masters of their fates. The fault, dear Brutus, is not in our stars, but in ourselves, that we are underlings. So he's this whole, you may have heard like of The Fault in Our Stars, right? Book by John Green, pretty popular in the last few years. But this idea, Cassius is trying to say, Brutus, we have to be masters of our own fate. If we want something to happen, we have to do it ourselves. That's what Cassius is saying. He's trying to talk him into doing something with him, taking action in some way. We can't just sit back and let things happen. We can't just sit back and, be a victim while Caesar's stomping around like a great statue. We have to take action if we don't agree with what people are doing. He talks about how, Rome shouldn't be a place where a king is in charge. Okay, I'm going to stop this first half of scene 2 right now, just to break up the video, okay? And I'll start back in just a minute.